welcome to another Let's Krok About It episode. Today we have Dr. Joyce, who is going to talk about the paper entitled Major Complications of Deep Venous Stenting. So Dr. Joyce, what was actually the drive to investigate on the major complications of deep venous stenting?
So over the last decade or so, we have seen a huge surge in deep venous stent placement for the management of both iliocaval and iliofemoral obstructions. And this increase, we feel, is due in part to the increased recognition of these diseases, and it is also likely to be attributable to the widespread application of IVUS in these patients. Now, we know that, as with every procedure type, deep venous stent placement can be associated with complications. However, most of the publications that we came across in the literature have focused on outcomes such as stent patency, and they've also had relatively short follow-up with little focus on major complications. And so, due to this, we aimed to determine the type and the incidence of serious complications which were associated with deep venous stent placement. We also wished to explore how these complications were managed in 3 high-volume centers across the world.
I see. Very, very interesting. So overall, how many patients did you include in your study?
So in this study, data were collated from prospectively maintained databases in 3 tertiary referral centers. So one center was Galway University Hospital, where I work. The next was St. Thomas's Hospital in London, and the third was Northwestern Memorial Hospital in Chicago in the United States. And patients were treated for the period January 2014 to September 2023. In total, over this 9-year study period, there was 1,814 patients who had either acute or acute on chronic deep venous obstruction.
Among all these patients, you had a fantastic number of patients. What was the most frequent complication that was encountered, and could you explain also why?
The most common complication that we noted was stent crushing. This occurred in 18 patients, or just under 30% of the entire group of patients who had complications. Stent crushing may be partly due to the high rate of post-thrombotic syndrome in our patient cohort, whereby the fibrotic vein exerts continuous extrinsic pressure on the stent, causing it to decrease in diameter over time. So this, we feel, led to stent crushing. It was managed in patients with venoplasty and vessel relining. And this wasn't done in all cases, but it was done in those in whom treatment was indicated. So a total of 11 out of 18 patients. And additional stents were deployed in 4 cases.
Not something dramatic overall as a complication. So from your vast experience, you had a vast experience on that, would you consider venous stenting a safe procedure? Would you see any lines of improvement? What is your experience saying for that?
We feel really that the rate of major complications, as we saw in our study, was quite low. It was 3%. And serious adverse complications such as death were extremely rare. The most commonly recognized complications, as I mentioned, were stent crushing, but they were also included stent fracture and erosion of the stent through the vessel wall. Major bleeding, thankfully, was rarely reported. It was about 0.3% in the entire series. And the overall rate of mortality was 0.2%, so very low. The 2 factors which were most associated with life-threatening complications were prior open surgery on the vein itself or on the surrounding adventitia, or previous radiotherapy. And so what we have recommended based on this study is that these factors are highlighted in advance of any intervention, and that practitioners actually look for any of these interventions when they're taking the patient history in advance of any deep venous intervention.
This is very, very interesting. Thank you so much for sharing your extensive work with CVIR. I'm pretty sure that the readers will find that very insightful. Thank you once again, and we're looking forward to receive more work from you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Bye-bye.